Well, howdy, and welcome back once again to the Withlacoochee River Railroad and to another episode of Monday Night Madness, where we go mad on Monday nights. Especially true if you didn't have a job for today. So I'm going mad here in the middle of Monday afternoon. So I thought I'd kind of combine it with the Withlacoochee River report to some degree. Uh-oh. Did it again. Huh. I gotta fix the couplers on that engine. I'll tell you, I think that's the next engine I think I'm gonna take and maybe put solid pilots on and KD couplers. Yeah, see how uneven the couplers are there? Yeah, they are. And we know that the rolling stock doesn't generally come off with bad coupler heights. But some of these older MTH engines do. Hey, follow me through the intro and we'll come back to the building here in just a few minutes. Yep, bad coupler height on the fault of the engine there. Maybe I can fix that. Okay, and here we are back again. Well, as you can see, it dried up nicely. We got our, now it's a lot of windows and doors, obviously, to paint up. Let's see, what do we need here? Could have sworn I had some white. Ah, here we go. Yeah. Vintage white. Okay. We got some green here. And let's see, will there be any more colors? There might be. Golden brown. Maybe not. All right. We've reached the hardest and most time consuming part of the build here, which is getting the building painted. It didn't take hardly any time to get the walls standing. Obviously, you just glued 4 walls together. And of course, it didn't take any time to spray paint gray paint on it to give it a base coat. And you saw in the last one, I think the video was something like 35 minutes long, which was not a long video at all. Whereas what we're dealing with today is a completely different animal. We're looking at, now we're looking to do very fine detail type painting. Now, this could be, you could paint the windows, the front facade of the storefront, and the top cap there, all one color. You could paint the all of it one color, and you wouldn't be totally wrong. I mean, after all, if you look at this one here, oh, I can't even reach it. Okay, whatever. But you could paint it all one color. It could be white. It could be like an olive drab color. And that would be fine. But, and it depends on how much you want to weather it up a little bit. It also depends on how much wear and tear you want to make it look like the paint's got. Of which case you would want to do an undercoat of like wood colors or whatever. Even though many buildings like that front facade for the storefront would often be cast iron, believe it or not, even on smaller buildings like this. I'm sure everybody remembers the D.D. Badger iron front. I don't remember what company put that out, but it was basically all it was an iron front. And you could build a building around it or make it a flat, one of the two. But it represented the front of a building, or what would be called an iron front. Back in those days, they used to do a lot with cast iron like that. So, but in the, here on our layouts, we want it to look a little more ornate. The building, I want a building that's not heavily weathered, not about to, crumble into nothing. A building that's in use, even up into the 1950s and 60s. So, what it's going to require here, now, like I said, one of the reasons that this is one of the most time-consuming is you'll need several paint brushes that you can cut in with. Cutting in is important. So this is where you're having a plethora of artist paint brushes really helps. And depending upon how much detail you want to paint in, it would also depend on sizes of brush. You may need a detail brush similar to that. So that's just some of the things to keep in mind here. Now, on this lower portion of the front of the building, I'm going to make it basically all one color. And let's see. Oh, yeah. Good old kind of olive drabby cut looking color. Around the windows, I want to use white. That's one of my favorite colors to use. All right. Now you can use any kind of paint you like. You can use your Testors enamels if you can still find them. You can use you can use any of the hobby paints out there. I'm using, basically these are hobby paints. even though they're basically cheap paints that you would pick up at like Hobby Lobby or Michael's Arts and Crafts or someplace like that. So now what you got to do here is be kind of careful coming in up here at the top. Well, you know, you're going to do it your way anyway. Now, on the real buildings, of course, this stuff was painted, so you're not doing anything unprototypical here. Okay, now once you get that cut in, you can come in and you can be a little more sloppy down here. And remember, you got a lot more corners and stuff to get into here. I know some people would probably prefer to mask it off and use an airbrush. And that's understandable. If I had time to do that, though, I mean, you know, by the time you mask it off, you might as well have just done it by hand. You know, time is valuable to us older folks. You know, we don't have as much time left on this earth as we used to. So time is a valuable asset here, and we just need to value every day we have. Again, you got to cut very carefully as you can. Just cut it in on the edge there. Okay. Like I said, now you get back in the middle. You can be a little sloppier. Now this is probably the easiest paint work you'll have as far as the detail work on the building. Right here, what you're doing now. This and probably the very top up here. Now you notice that I'm painting this all green right here. That doesn't mean I won't use other colors in there to make it a more exciting place maybe. again, it's all up to you how fancy you want to make your little diner here, Vinnie's Grill. Home of the 99-cent steak. You almost have to put a second mortgage on the house to eat steak these days, don't you? You want to be sure, and you know, this is the hard part about painting the windows, is you want to be sure that you get every part of those windows, including, you know, where the glass will be joining the okay. Alrighty. That part of that's done. Now you noticed I pulled out several brushes. Alrighty. We're going to go right on up to the top of the building here, and since I'm not really worried about what's behind it, now the caps back here, the wall caps, we'll probably take and paint those probably terracotta red or something like that. If you get a little paint on it, it's not going to hurt nothing. Again, now that we're getting into the interior of it, you can be a little sloppier in there. Yes, it's a little bit bigger brush, and the reason is because I want to get most of it painted. So, Alrighty. Now see, the thing of it is to get the whole thing painted. You might come back in later and put different colors in there to make it look nice. Give it a little fancier look. But that's really not necessary to worry about that at this point, because we're just getting basically, you know, if you're going to have other colors in there, you want a good base coat to put them on. So don't that figure? Yeah, we'll have to go back over that with the burn red. I screwed up. It happens. No sense in crying over spilt milk. Now, if you run out of paint, you know, and you've got more in the bottle, obviously, you pour a little more paint in your dispenser there. And as you can see, it doesn't take all that long. Now, again, yeah, you could have sat here and spent hours masking off the building and painting these with an airbrush. Would you have done it? Most of us probably wouldn't. But you notice also that the further along you get, the more realism you're actually adding to the building. You know, that's the thing that's really the trick to making these plastic buildings look more like what they're supposed to represent. Alrighty, yeah. Alright. Alrighty. Now, and all I'm using in there is regular, ordinary, everyday bottled water. Why am it's water I pick up off the job sites. A lot of the time you'll have either half, or in many cases, it's water you're not necessarily going to drink, but it's bottled water. And the reason is, a lot of the time they've drank a little of it, sat it, you know, put the cap back on, sat it down, and they're never gonna drink from it again. Okay, now we've got the base coat down up there. Okay, need a little bit more. Right there. And right there. One of the things you want to make sure is you get the whole thing. Okay. So examine your work afterwards. All right. It's looking a little better. And the reason, you can of course go back over it with another coat later. By doing that, you'll get it a little whiter. Or, you know, because obviously white is a little bit brighter color than the okay, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come back in underneath that corbel there, and I'm going to dry brush in, get that white off of there, or cover up the white. And what you want to do is use a cutting brush. Go ahead and just basically dry brush it in. Yeah, we've had a lot of humidity around here, so this is difficult to do. Because if you touch another part where the paint is still wet, it's not going to dry off immediately. All right. Okay, for your windows, you may want to use a little bit smaller brush. I'm going to go ahead and put a little more white paint in there. Just a little more. See here. You may want to use a kind of a smaller brush to paint in your windows. And there's reasons for that. All right. One of the things you'll also discover very quickly or very early on is this can be very tedious on buildings like this. You know, when you can plug the when you can glue the windows into the building, and you've got the windows on a separate sprue, it might just be easier to spray paint. Of course it would. But here's a building where it's just like the HO and N-scale DPM structures. They just like the DPM structures, the windows are generally molded in. Not on all their structures, but on the bulk of them. Like I said, with every stroke of the brush, your building begins to look a little more realistic or take on a more realistic tone as you go along. And you can see that that's beginning to look a little bit better. Oh yeah. Yep, the building's beginning to take on its character now, or part of its character. And now you can also see why this is the most time-consuming part of the build, is because you're. And one of the things you're going to do is you're going to paint these windows not in any given pattern. And the reason you don't is painting these windows is a royal pain in the backside. You see, these buildings can be every bit as time-consuming to build as any craftsman kit. Depends on how much you want to put into it. Some folks would have just glued the red parts together and left it at that and plopped it down on the layout and would have left it there. Never to touch it again. Never to paint it. Never to do anything with it. Sadly. Now, if you get a little bit on the bricks, don't worry about it. Just leave it. Because you know that the guys doing the actual painting didn't do a perfect job of it the first time anyway. So, yeah, we've had, like I was just saying a little bit ago, yes, we've had plenty of high humidity here the last few days. And Hey, you got a Monday Night Madness on Saturday, didn't you? Okay, again, the building's taking on just a little bit more of its character, which is what you want it to do. Gotta be sure you get in here and get all of the window moldings painted. She's looking pretty good so far. Now on the side over here, all we got is windows. So on the side over here, we'll probably just paint those white. On this side, it's just a blank wall. Don't know if I'm going to put a decal on it or what. Wonder how many people actually. I'm sure there's plenty of you out there watch these videos that have plenty of experience doing this. How many of you actually enjoy doing it? I don't necessarily enjoy doing the work, but one thing I do enjoy doing is the finished work. Because when it's finished, I feel like I've accomplished something, you know? The nice thing about the windows on the side there, though, they're all square. They don't have this decorative. So there's only 4 of these windows. There's 6 of the other. There's 1 window on the back wall. One of the things that I will warn you about when doing this kind of paint work, you really kind of got to be in the mood to do it. Now, I'm usually in the mood to do it, but don't always have time. Although, I got to admit, I haven't worked since last Wednesday. So I'm kind of wondering, you know, am I going to have another week like last week? Because we got a train show coming up Saturday on the 13th at Dana's. Now again, the building has reached a little bit more of its character level, hasn't it? Yes, it has, and it's beginning to look pretty decent. Yes, it is. So it's beginning to take on its character, which I'm glad to see. All righty. We'll get this one building out of, or this one wall out of the way. We're going to just take a little bit of a break. I'll take a break. Y'all be right back into it. Oh, I got a lizard on the wall. Kind of running up the wall there. Those lizards, they got little suction cups on their feet. Or on their toes. Or on, you know, at the ends of their toes. And they can climb the walls. You and I can't do that, but they sure can. One of the advantages you have in O-scale, the buildings, while they're bigger and you got more area to paint, obviously, over HO scale or N scale, but one thing you can say about them, it's a little easier to space things out and like I said before, this is a little easier building to paint, or this is the most time-consuming part of the whole thing, because you got to get your paint just right. All righty. We know how that's done now. For those of you that didn't know how people got those painted, now you know. And as you can see, it's not perfect. The only way, like I said, you're going to ever make it perfect is if you mask the building off, spend several hours doing the masking, and then basically you take and airbrush your different colors on. wait for that to dry, and then airbrush the rest of it, whatever colors. And, that's just how you do it. It takes a little bit longer to get one of these buildings done up right. It truly does. So, I'm just going to take a few minutes break here, let things dry a little bit, and turn the building around, and we'll work on the back a little bit. Okay. While we're taking a little break, I've got some things going through my mind. And this week on my YouTube channel, or on my YouTube account, I've been watching a lot of videos. Some Dave Ramsey, and of course I've watched many of the model railroad videos. I remember Chris of Chris's Trains and Things talking about how is it that he can afford all these trains. Well, how do you finance your model railroad? Mine's financed mostly by loose change. Whatever I can roll up before a given show into coin rolls. Things of that nature, and whatever I can sell at the show a lot of the time. I'll use some of that money to actually buy my trains with. That way, I haven't plopped down any credit cards, and usually at a train show you're not going to anyway. But I don't go into the hobby shops and plop down a credit card. Well, you notice I don't have the latest greatest crap from China from Lionel or MTH or even Atlas O. Do I get good stuff? Absolutely, I get good stuff. And I get it at a fairly cheap price. Like I said, you go into a train show with the idea of, well, let's see who's going to not want to pack it up and take it home again. That's your most common way of getting a price down to where you want to pay, or something you're willing to pay. There's the willing price, and then there's the want price. The want price for me is well, that's lowballing. And I'll lowball them if I can. Just like anybody who's buying up a collection for resale, they're just building up stock. They'll buy at pennies on the dollar for whatever it is your spouse or you or whoever else paid for it. It's going to be pennies on the dollar. If you've got $10,000 wrapped up in it, I might give you $1,000. Might if it's a really good collection, I might talk to you about a nickel on the dollar. Yeah, but usually it's going to be 2 or 3 cents on the dollar, and there's a reason for that. I'm the one that's got to take the chance that it ain't going to sell. I'm the one that's going to have to pack it up and take it home multiple times. Sometimes you get stuff over to your table and you put it out. It goes right away for whatever price you put on it. But I don't have $1,000. Well, that's about 10 cents on the dollar. If it's worth $10,000 or was worth $10,000 when you bought it, when it was initially bought. Over time. But I've also been watching these people that they get credit cards and they want the latest, greatest crap that they can buy. Whether it's cars, houses, clothing, whatever. They use their credit cards and they get themselves into trouble. And then they wonder, when they're $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 in debt, or in some cases in the six figures, $150,000, $200,000, $300,000 in debt to credit cards, no doubt. And of course, there's these people that have student loans and stuff like that. Yeah, you can add that in too, because that's a debt you can't even bankrupt that debt. Government protected themselves. You're going to pay that one. But How do you finance your model railroad? Do you go in to your local hobby dealer, and when you see the latest, greatest thing in Lionel's catalog, you say, I just got to have it, just got to have it, just got to have it? You plop $200 down to get that $4,000 worth of Lionel Santa Fe Chief or Super Chief with the 4F units and 7 passenger cars. Yeah, I bet that's a pretty nice set. I think it's like, I don't know for sure, but I think it's approaching the $4,000 mark or a little better. Do you go and do that? Because you see, if you go and do that and you're plopping down a credit card, you're going to be spending the next 30 years paying that off. If you just pay the minimums every month, you carry that balance. You know, one of the things Chris of Chris's Trains and Things, he said in his videos, how do I afford all of these trains? One of the things he pointed out is that I never use a credit card, he said. I do not use credit cards to buy my trains. I don't blame him. You shouldn't be using credit cards to buy anything just because you want it. He sees something he wants, you know, yeah, he is right. If he's making good money and he knows how to handle his money, what I know that he's doing is he'll plop down the hold fee, the deposit, to order something, and by the time it comes in, if he's been diligent about putting his money back to make that purchase, then the rest of it will be there when what he orders arrives. And that's how he does it. How I do it is I don't go buy from the hobby shops very often. What I buy at the hobby shops are like, knife blades and glues and supplies like that. I don't ever buy much of anything unless he's got good used models there that he's willing to sell cheap. Often they're not willing to sell it cheap. They just don't understand it. They just don't do it. So I just don't buy my models from the hobby store, not even from Dana's very often. Years ago when I was an HO&N, but then I'd still find a $4 freight car kit or caboose kit or something on the shelf. I'd go ahead and maybe buy that. Maybe a $15 passenger car. That was back when I was an HO. That's not out of reason. But it's not that I'm against supporting your local hobby shop. I'm certainly not against that. I think we should. And I know he's stuck with having to order this stuff, get it in, and then he gets mad when, you know, people can't pay for it. Well, you know, the prices are just too high these days. But you can still support your local hobby shop. Just realize you've got to put the money back for it. I don't make enough money to be consistently putting money back towards stuff. So if I, you know, when I was putting money back, and I was mainly putting that money back for the train shows. But if I knew Dana had something I wanted, I would consider going in and buying it from him, and I would pull from that kitty. But lately, this last summer has been horrible for jobs. The year didn't start out too bad, but it got progressively worse. Just before our last train show over here at the fairgrounds with Regal Railways, I had a good long week, a full week of flagging at, you know, near $15 an hour, which isn't bad. You know, we still have our Social Security coming in, so it's not a big deal for me. I'm just trying to make money to buy my trains with, or it helps us with shopping and stuff like that. We got other things that helps us with shopping too. But if I want something from Dana's or any other hobby shop, I got to save my pennies for it, just like anybody else does. And I would never advise anybody to ever, I don't care if it's going to sell out to Joe Blow and it's something you just got to have, you ain't got to have it just so much you're going to plop down a credit card and pay 30% interest on it for the next 20 years. Not a wise move at all. So, you know, keep your model railroad debt-free. You may not be debt-free on a lot of things yourself, but, you know, this is your hobby, and how can you enjoy it much if you're not keeping it debt-free? Something to think about. You think? Until next time, let's get back to the paintwork, shall we? All right. Okay, and we're back. And what we're going to do is we're going to get the back end of the building here. And we're going to paint that. Well, we're going to paint them white. I decided to go ahead and leave everything in the white. We're also going to come back and when the building is fully dry and everything and fully built, we'll come back and do a black wash on it anyway. So the black wash is going to really tone things down and bring it all together when everything's done. So I'm going to start off by painting the window here. And these windows, while they're a little easier to paint than the windows were on the facade up front of the building, what you run into here is there's usually so many of them. We've got 7 windows just like this. So 7 windows. Again, you can see with basically every stroke of the brush, the building gains a little more character. So just be careful with the brush. Don't rush it. Don't put yourself in a situation here where you end up, you know, painting half the bricks all the way down white because you were in too much of a hurry. Okay, we've got the window done here. And I'm going to go to a larger brush for the doors. Now you might be wondering why I haven't shown you the painting of the side windows yet. I don't want to be laying this thing down or anything like that, or be moving it around too much. And it's really not necessary to. Alrighty. Again, you're on the back of the building here. You don't really need to worry if you get a little bit of paint on the bricks. It doesn't even have to be straight, because on the back of the building, they weren't too worried about it. Oh, okay. Okay, again, the character is added in. And you can see we've got everything basically finished up here. Whoops. Cheap stuff from Walmart here. All right. We've got these caps. They're easily painted. You can paint those flat black, or you can paint them concrete or whatever with black rusty whatever. I mean, a lot of them were made of steel back in the day. And in the next episode of Monday Night Madness, What we will do is probably get ready to put the windows in, or I should say the window glass. We'll put in the window glass, and we'll glue in the sheets behind it, you know, for Vinnie's grill and all of that. I'm just going to go ahead and build it basically box stock as far as I know. But until next time, happy railroading.